make it through, move along.
Gathered friends, welcome to Bionicle Day, aka 810 Day. Oh, here we are. It's the Writers' Room special. I'm your host, Max Dudek, and I'm joined by a bunch of our previous guests from the season. Everyone, please introduce yourselves in whichever order you please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bob with Dr. 27. I'm going to charge in first here. Hi, I'm one of the co-creators of Myths and Legacy. I'm very happy to be here. Hope everyone has a wonderful 810 day.
You too. Since I've already spoken up, hello everyone. I'm Tahnok Trapper. I'm one of the guest writers for Myths and Legacy, mostly focusing on stories about the everyday lives of Matoran. You can read my stories in my own little library or in the Matoran Adventures anthology on the site.
Lovely.
I'm James. I'm the head admin developer of Wall of History, and I'm mostly just around to make sure that everything stays canon compliant, and I've also helped with outlining some of the stories we've written for Vision of the Great Beings.
Beautiful.
Hey there, my name is LostHead. I'm one of the writers for Myths and Legacy as well as Vision of the Great Beings. Happy Bionicle Day, everybody.
Yeah, and I'll hop in on Nicrophora. I have a few stories on Myths and Legacy and a few on my Archive of Our Own account. And gosh, a few scattered still on BZ Power. I think you can still find a story that I wrote there. So, happy to be here. Happy Bionicle Day.
Excellent. I believe that's everyone. So yes, this is a bit of a different episode than usual for Gathered Friends. Usually we have a bunch of stories that we discuss that we have read, but this time, for this 810 Day special, we're just going to be having a nice chill roundtable discussion about ourselves, the creatives involved in this, and, our involvement in Bionicle in general. So, first question I want to ask, and I'm going to pose this question to everyone, once everyone has had a chance to answer this, we'll move on to the next topic. But first, what made you want to write Bionicle stories?
Wonderful. I'll go first here. So I've been writing Bionicle stories for a long, long time. I think I started in around 2008 when I just started building my own creations, and I figured, hey, it would be great to have a story to go along with these so other people can understand why I care about these little plastic dudes with masks. But I think what really motivated me to start writing was a bit later. I was kind of in university, and I figured, hey, there's a lot more people out there who want to be able to read and to engage with this stuff. I might as well try doing something canon compliant or kind of reaching a more global audience. So I found that initially through the custom Bionicle wiki. I'm now the site leader of the CBW, and I still write stories there to this day about custom creations and fan-created content. But I mainly do my writing for canon compliant stuff. And I found towards the end of uni was kind of what I was gravitating towards. I had this knowledge of the lore, this knowledge of the characters, and I really wanted to do something with that, to fill in some of the gaps in the story, some of the characters who didn't really get a spotlight. And I did that by writing a story called Relevance, which was about the Toa Nuva. 3 of the Toa Nuva losing their masks, having to swap masks for different Kanohi to defeat a Borakal. And the reason I wrote that story, the reason I called it Relevance, was because I wanted to test the water and see how relevant is a story set in 2003 in the 2020s. How relevant do we consider that? And it turns out pretty relevant. A lot of people really did want to read it. So that's kind of where I came from and where I am today. What made me want to become a writer as well. That's where I'm at.
I loved that story. It was a fun exploration of really a very underrated story arc, I think.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear. Thanks.
What a lovely answer.
I guess I can hop in. So I might be able to... I'm not sure what the first Bionicle story I ever wrote was, but I know that I started writing comics, actually, I think was initially what I wrote back in like second grade. So probably like 2003, 2004. And I started writing simple little stories. And at some point that probably would have turned into Bionicle because I was already deep into the Bionicle mines at that point. And I can remember, like going out and taking, maybe some other people have this recollection of going out and taking my models and taking pictures of them and posing them for comics and then editing them into like in like this cute little program to make little comics about my OCs on whatever made up island I was imagining them on. And so for a long time, throughout my childhood, that's what I would write, is I would write stories about like, my OCs or MOCs getting up to wild adventures and stuff. I basically didn't touch canon. I didn't interact with it for a long time. And that's what a lot of stuff I wrote on BZ Power was I wrote a couple of OC stories. I think I played around in that expanded multiverse setting that they came up with at one point. That might be, I don't know if anyone remembers that.
I remember this.
There you go. Yeah, no, I wrote a story that was like a long multi-chapter thing that was weirdly popular. I eventually stopped writing it. I think it was like All of Reality was the first one, and then I like started writing a sequel, and then I just lost the plot and got bored and did other things. But for years after that, I would occasionally have people like approaching me on BS01 or some other website and being like, "Hey, I wish you had finished this fic or something." I was like, "Really? That one? Why? Why would you want that one to be finished?" Which is how I feel about a lot of the stuff that I wrote on BZ Power back when I was like 12, right? And I kind of took a break from writing and engaging with Bionicle fandom for a bit, especially around the time it ended. And I got back into it circa 2013, so before leaks of G2 started happening. I actually got back into the fandom organically, like just before that started happening. So it felt like a really weird trend-setting moment there for me. But I was not lured back by the leaks. I was so like hipsterish about that. I got back into Bionicle because of my own thing.
Before it was cool.
Exactly. But I got back into it. Oh, I think it was around 2012 when I first wrote An Even Exchange, which was one of the first times I tried to write something canon compliant. And it was actually, I wrote it and published it I just missed the window to submit it to the storyline and theories contest, Memoirs of the Dead, on BZ Power. But it was very much written in that spirit of like, oh, here's a dead character who's like a weird side character that we don't really know anything about. I wonder what this character's story was. And I had a lot of fun writing that, and that became like my approach thereafter was like, wait, I actually really enjoy playing around in the canon compliant sphere, taking these side characters and that we see only these very limited glimpses of them, and trying to figure out like, well, what was happening and all the stuff we didn't see, what was going on there, because everybody has their own story. that was what motivated me to eventually, I wrote a few other fics that have kind of been lost to the mists of time, that I have intentionally buried. And in undergrad, I wrote. I was idle for a whole summer, with like just a part-time lab internship, and I wrote all of Reign of Shadows: The Untold Stories, which we discussed previously. And that was kind of the biggest work I ever wrote, and wish that I had that much free time to write similarly huge follow-ups, because I definitely have some things that I could do, but time permitting. So I've written a few short stories since then and a few little snippets, and I still occasionally work on some stuff, but time comes for us all. Probably not going to see another Summer of Rostas anytime soon, but I still have a great deal of fondness for Bionicle. It was hugely involved in a lot of my creative expression and exploration from childhood onwards, and so I'm happy to be here. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, that's what we want.
Fantastic answer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Who's next? Who wants to go next?
So my answer's a bit shorter because I wasn't really involved in the Bionicle community until like 2019 when I actually started working on Wall of History. My main motivation to start actually getting involved in Myths and Legacy and writing, or at least help outline writing myself, was Taraga Nuva's man, it's been so long I've forgotten the name.
Biological Chronicle?
No, the YouTube video she did. Just one sec, I gotta Google it.
Go ahead.
Oh, deconstructing Bionicle. The video about Takanuva.
That one.
And like Taraga analysis of like where Takanuva's character arc was going to go in the unfinished serials. And I thought that was just like a really interesting analysis, and I thought it sounded like it could be a really compelling story. Something more character driven than we typically got in Bionicle, especially in the later years. And I don't know, at that time I was working on Wall of History and I was becoming fairly known as, one of the lore experts, I guess. And so when Gonal approached me about Myths and Legacy, I sort of got this idea that, okay, maybe we could work together on this project to get that character arc and that storyline realized. And then Vahkiti mentioned he'd already been working on Solus Magna, which was a similar-ish thing. And so all those pieces kind of fell into place for me to try and get involved in this project to finish up those serials in a way that I felt would be satisfying.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
That leaves just me now.
Has yet to go.
Right.
I think you and LostHead.
My Bionicle writing journey was a little similar to that of Nicrophora's. Basically, my little brother and I would fool around and build mocks, and we were one of the people that tried to imagine a proper ending to the series, a proper ending to the Bionicle stories. I wasn't as active as my brother was. I only really joined the message boards and Busy Power like very recently, like a few years ago, and I've pretty much I've been writing as long as I've been in school. The very early things I will not talk about. They are nothing of value. Yeah, you can believe that. I've started taking writing more seriously in like middle school. I started with poetry, then I dabbled in some in prose, and I honed in my style. I tried a few different things. Mostly wrote short stories and poems. Then, like a couple of years ago, I decided I rediscovered Bionicle. I decided to read the entire story from start to finish, all the novels, all the games, all the comics, and I read through them, and I had a few ideas. one of the first ideas was, you know, the first two Pomatoran you meet when you enter Pokor in Mnog 2, Hafu and Kamen.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, I kind of liked how these two random Matoran were together, and I imagined Hafu is a character in of itself, but Kamen, who is Kamen? And I imagined what do these two look like together? What's their dynamic? And from that idea came Hafu and Kamen on Matanui. And then I posted that on the message boards. I got a lot of nice replies. Then came a sequel, Hafu and Kamen on Metro Nui. And then I had a few more ideas, and I just kept going, and well, here I am now. So that's kind of my story.
Oh, how sweet. I like Kamen and Hafu. They're that was pretty fun.
I really like
All right,
the slice of life stories you've done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
and while we're trading these kinds of words, Nicrophora, I just read Reign of Shadows. I quite enjoyed it. It was a nice story, and I also enjoyed An Even Exchanged. It really does feel like it could fit in right in that Memoirs of the Dead anthology.
Right,
really,
yeah. Thank you kindly.
You're welcome.
Hell yeah.
I'll echo the praises
kind
for
words
both
around.
those too.
Right, LostHead, what's your story? How'd you get here?
Alrighty. Well, I've kind of, throughout my life, I've kind of dipped in and out of Bionicle. I think very earliest I got, it was like Onua Mata from my uncle, and that's sort of what like started me into the fandom when I was like really, really little. But in terms of like creating stuff, it wasn't until about when the reboot came out when I decided, hey, I wanted to write a story. And it was a story where like it was me and my friend, and we had like our Bionicle, our like self-mocks, our self-insert characters in this big crossover with the original Bionicle and Hero Factory and Generation 2, and it was really bad. It was I can imagine looking back at it. Yeah, it's still on the internet, unfortunately. If you look, you'll find it. I don't want to.
What's it called?
I don't want to say.
Okay, we'll find it.
I don't even remember
you don't
what
want
it was
to say
called, actually.
On A10 Day in front of the live audience?
It was on the TTV boards. I don't even know. I don't even remember what it was called, honestly. Here, if I find it later, I'll pull it up. But
don't worry about it if you don't want to share it. I'm just being silly.
No, I get you. Now, since then, I've kind of warbled in and out, gotten into other hyperfixations, and then would have been about sometime either last year or the year before. It's kind of hard to tell now, but is when I decided, like, hey, I kind of want to get back into it. And I'm glad you mentioned it earlier. I looked into Taraganuba's Biological Chronicle with the book compilation. And that was something I decided, like, I was like, okay, I'm going to get these and like try to print them out and have like a book collection that I can just go back to and read Bionicle through. I think it was during, I was reading through them and I read the 2006 one. And I was surprised because I had read the Legends books before, but I didn't realize that there was sort of this skip specifically where, what was it? Where the sort of Jala decides to form the Toa Naika, and then we just cut to him and all the other Matoran have already left, and we haven't even seen many of them in 2006 up before that. And so that's kind of what got me going, and it got me looking into, like, my standpoint at that point was like, okay, are there any like fan fiction I can use to like add to the collection and sort of pad it out? And that sort of just got me on the rabbit hole, and it's how I discovered Myths and Legacy. And that specific path led me to writing Call to Arms, which was my first sort of like actual Bionicle short story that I'd put my name on. So that's been a wild ride since then. Since about a year and a half since then, I've been working on Myths and Legacy with Gunnar and Bob, and it's been really, really fun. That's been a humongous creative outlet for me, even though, again, I'm still at university, and that's been really difficult to try and balance those two parts of my life with writing and schoolwork, and then having time to be a human being. But it's been a really enjoyable experience to sort of get to add to this. And of course, since then, Gunell introduced me to Vision of the Great Beings. And so now I'm knee deep in it. I have like 15 different works in progress on my Google Docs. But yeah, no, that's it was pretty much my main journey happened very recently then when I found Myths and Legacy.
Wait, you have time to be a human being? How do you manage that?
I like to think so. Usually it's because my partner says, stop typing, it's time for bed, and I do.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So you don't have time to be a human being, you have time to be like a log. Like asleep.
That's close enough. I'll take log over doing homework sometimes. I'll say that.
That's real.
Yeah.
Fair enough, man. But yeah, thank you for your answers, everyone. Now I want to say, let's have some good old fan fun. Who is everyone's favorite Bionicle character? Let's go simple with this.
Oh gosh.
Vakama sweep.
No, for real.
Vakama's
I'm
up
gonna
there.
have to go with Vakama as well.
I think I have. Oh gosh. Well, it's definitely one of the girls, which narrows it down significantly. But choosing
Sadly,
which
yeah.
girls is tough. Give me a moment. I'll come back to it.
I mean, Nokama's pretty great too. It's hard
Nokama's.
to pick just one favorite.
Oh, I am
really.
fond of Viscera. She's very funny.
Who said what? Who wants to
sorry.
speak?
I was gonna say, can I pick like one for like each year? Not for each year. That'd be too much.
Go ahead. This is
right.
as chill as possible. This is a free-form episode.
All right, I'm gonna try to do like a top like 3 or 5. I'd say Iruni is up there. I really like him, which again is mainly because of some of the fan works, but I also really liked him in Challenge of the Hordika when he's talking with Matau. That was a really cool character in that. I like Kina a lot from the Glatorian arc, although I think the movie did her a bit dirty.
Did everyone dirty?
It did everything dirty. Yeah, I liked.
But she got it real bad.
Yeah, I liked Motonui in that movie, and Akar, but everyone else was kind of And
Really,
then
the entire arc was done dirty, if we're being honest.
Oh,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like
It's a travesty.
Yeah.
I'll just pick one other. I'll say I like Hafu. I like Hafu in the Matoran. He's
Yes.
funny.
Excellent
Hafu
choice.
Oh,
original.
it's so fun.
Yeah.
I like
Hafu
your
is
I
fun.
like your idea of the top 3. I'm not sure who my top 3 would be, but I think probably on there is Lariska's definitely up there. Lariska's a top choice. Honestly, also the Shattered one, and I'll throw in Viscera for some amusement. She appears so little, but she's so funny.
Nakama
In the
Stan.
extremely brief period she's in.
Oh, this is tough because I love the unlovable unknown characters. I want to say like Thotok or Vastas or someone like.
Oh yeah.
Because I
don't
like
think I
that.
would ever expect anyone to say Photok.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is maybe the least likely response.
That's the thing. I really want to write
I
a
don't even
story
have
about
beef with
Thotok.
Photok. It's just I've never heard anyone be like, he's my favorite.
Oh no, it's not that they're my favorite. It's that they're the ones that I'm most intrigued by. I want to write something for them because there's nothing there. So
that's true.
I mean, I guess some of my favorite characters are probably like Lupaka, Iruni. I've always loved Lee Khan, just like the straightforwardness and the stoic heroicism of him. But I think Vakama I kind of have to say, contractually obligated to say Vakama at this point.
Nice.
I think
Vakama
like
got
the
a lot of
best
good material.
written character, if nothing else. Like,
Yeah. I mean, post
feels very
2005, the 2004 era, it's like a little too angsty for my taste. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be unpopular opinion. Vakama is overrated. Okay, maybe not overrated, but yeah.
Ooh, blocked.
It's been nice
Yes,
working
sir.
with you on Myths and Legacy, but this must come to an end. I'm sorry.
Blocked and
Yeah, this
reported.
is where our
I prefer
contract ends, I'm
Likan, I
afraid.
prefer Tahu.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
Likan's pretty
Yeah,
rad.
Those
too.
are
Likan's a
respectable
legend.
choices.
Yeah, I like Tahu.
Likan is written to be the coolest.
Yeah, yeah, because he's cool.
Yeah.
He's just cool. Tahu has this semblance of a good character arc that I think they didn't really handle all that well. But he's Tahu, so, you know, Tahu.
Yeah, he's just cool enough to carry it.
Yeah.
I saw a Tumblr post or something one time that was like, Tahu's the only Toa of Fire without imposter syndrome. Like, Vakama makes one mistake and starts crying about it, but Tahu watches the entire universe get taken over, and it's partially his fault. He's like, okay, let's get to it. Let's
Yeah,
start
it's-
riding back.
it doesn't reflect at all on that.
Yeah, what
Let's
about
fix this.
Jaller? What about Jaller? He doesn't.
Jala has some insecurities about Matoro in like the end of 2006,
But that's
beginning of
not really imposter
2007.
syndrome.
Yeah, that's more of like, how do I deal with this guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just depends on what you describe it as.
So I also like Jaller. I want to say Takua Takanuva, because
That's us.
he also has a character arc which is much better than what they did with Tahu. And I'm also gonna say Gelu, the white guy,
Gelu.
the white Gladiatorian,
Yeah.
just because he looks cool.
That reminds me,
Because
we
he-
forgot Matoro.
Oh,
Someone say
yeah.
Matoro.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, how sad.
Our Lord and
Yeah,
Savior.
Yes.
Galu's a great
Sorry,
choice, though.
Matoro.
Yeah. You know, some characters are just so good that you don't consider them when you pick your favorites.
Right, it's
Exactly.
like you gotta pick
Right.
a favorite
You
outside
gotta,
of
you gotta
everybody
pick
else.
something that makes you special.
I was going to say, like, I
I feel
a
like we have a subconscious desire to do that, you know?
I have a Takanuva tattoo, but like I feel like that's cheating. He's just like the main character. Like,
Yeah. He's us.
And he's only
We
the
are-
main
we are
character
Takuba.
for like the
Yo,
first 3
my-
years. I don't think it's cheating.
My partner, when they were playing Monog, was the rudest Takua ever. Oh my god.
How do you mean?
They just were like, I'm not helping you. Bye.
Okay.
oh,
Just Takua's on a mission.
They very nearly didn't take Taipu with them to Licora.
Oh, what a monster.
I know. And I was like, what?
if it makes you feel better, my partner doomed all of Monanui because he couldn't defeat the Rahi minigame at the end, so he just looked up the ending on YouTube.
Nah, I've been
So
there.
he's doomed the island of Monanui.
Oh.
Even
sad.
bigger monster.
I just looked into an alternate timeline.
Your partners are horrible.
You know what? It's time for Vaison to go to that universe.
I had an ex who I told about Bionicle, and he was like, "This sounds cool, but the color schemes make no sense," and started like designing like entirely new color schemes. Which that was definitely an interesting direction for someone to take it.
What's wrong
I
with the
remember
colors?
she really wanted air to be like teal, like a pale teal and gray. I think something like that, and she really wanted to switch Earth and Stone. That was the real issue that she really pitched on. That was a fun
Strange.
conversation.
Yeah.
Actually, I could kind of see why. With Earth and
Mhm.
Stone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, especially
The
when
brown, the brown is dirt.
right,
innit?
because when I went I actually went to Hawaii for a geology class trip, and I was looking around, and I was like, wait a minute, here in like one of the Pacific Islands, like you look around, the stone is black. It is black igneous rock, and the dirt is brown. And so I was like,
Well,
wait a minute,
looks like Huki and Aika was made more sense than we thought.
possibly.
Wasn't there a theory that Earth was originally brown and stone was originally tan? There was a post somewhere here on Discord where I heard something about this. I don't know. Anyone knows about anything about this? No?
That sounds plausible.
I do not.
What was it again? Oh, the element IDs. What was
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was
I-
about that. That Earth was brown and stone was tan.
That would make sense with the I saw one that was like Ohatu Mata, but in the one of the Slicer colors that was like tan and gray.
Bon chance, Slicer. Sorry.
What?
It was from the French Slicer commercials.
That's a deep cut.
Yeah. I don't know, it sounds very satisfying to me. Good luck, Slicer.
Bonjour, Slicer.
Sorry, I derailed that. My bad.
That's good.
Think we all said our favorite characters?
Yeah.
Have we?
Yeah.
I think we all
Least
attempted
favorite
it.
character.
Oh, wow.
I don't have room for this
No,
negativity here.
Oh
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't think of one. I love them all.
Yeah, even the ones that I dislike, even the characters who I really dislike how their story was handled, I don't blame them for that. I'm like, oh, your story could have been more interesting. I wonder if there's a way I could like reframe it and understand you in a more interesting way, you know?
I think Bionicle is just pretty neat, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's something to appreciate about all of it.
Uncontroversial
you know?
take.
Maybe some parts more than others, but I don't think any part is like no part of it is like unpleasant to me. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, Biddle sucks.
How dare you? I will fight you to the death.
No, he does kind of suck. That mask is way overpowered and also dumb.
But that's what's so much fun about
Right.
it.
No, I like that he's fun to hate because he thinks he's like the most important Makuta, but so does everyone.
Right.
I know. I liked his max power. That was pretty rad. That was a cool fight scene with him and Onua.
Ironically,
think his
not
mask power
special for
makes
thinking
sense.
you're special. Oh, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's like if you kill his past version, why wouldn't that, like, that's not...
I always interpreted it as him sending them back before they can die. Like when they get hit, he sends them back. That's always what I saw it as. Because I don't know. In my memory, it was like he acknowledges that if they die, you know, he's done. So he like has to be vigilant with it. You know, if someone gets injured, they go whoop, you know, right back.
I feel like you could actually... Oh, yeah.
If there was a scene where like he briefly disappears because his future self plucked him out and then just comes right back.
Covered in battle scars.
That'd be
And
interesting.
amnesia.
Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
he comes back just
I
like
don't know
Burns.
what
book saying
happened.
that it, I remember the book saying, like, I remember there's a part in one of the books where like he's thinking about it because he sometimes just like randomly has injuries
Mm-hmm.
because he has like a bit
That's
a
an
bit of
interesting
like
thing about him, yeah.
yeah, because he
has this
does generally
curse.
like worry about it a bit because he's like, I thought I was the present one, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I was the
You know.
primary. You know what I would
Yeah.
love to see is a story that's written like it still brings forward one of his past selves, and that past self dies or something, and that creates a whole alternate timeline, and the story just starts with that alternate timeline. You have to find out that's the reason why we're in this situation. It's because Batil made a mistake.
Or what if
An
he comes
alternate
back
timeline
at some
that's just-
point? What if he comes
Sorry?
back from the future with like a really specific wound or even like a particular
Yeah.
like message carved in his armor or something? And he
Yeah, I
just,
was
like,
gonna
shows up and
suggest
he's
the
like,
same
wait, what
thing,
happened?
like,
It's like a reverse
it's-
memento or something.
It's
Yeah, wasn't
really
that a
dumb
plot
in my
point at some
opinion.
point? Or
that
am
he
I
can't-
imagining it?
I think you're just thinking about the part I mentioned where like he talks about in the books how sometimes he just like has random injuries.
Yeah, but I think I remember something about carving a message into himself to like carry a message across time.
I think that might have been asked in the Greg Q&A at one point, but I don't know of it ever happening in canon.
I don't think it ever happened in canon.
I like that idea though. That sounds great.
Yeah.
It's a cool
See, this is
concept.
this is the start of a cool story idea. Maybe like
Mhm.
a one-off.
Yeah,
the
Peter
other
had,
thing I don't understand is that why would anyone want to fix the timeline? You already got one where Biddle's dead. Like that sounds perfect to
okay.
How dare you?
me.
But we
I'm gonna
want to
say my
have
least
our
favorite-
entertaining character.
I'm going to say my least favorite is Photok, just to even it out.
How dare
Sorry,
you.
Photok.
There's a lot of hating for the stone characters going on here. I'm not happy with it.
That's tragic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
no,
not
they deserve
tolerate the
better.
stone slander.
It's because he's
Exactly.
orange. He's not brown, he's orange.
Technically,
Actually, wait,
he's a
Photok
light
isn't even a stone man.
Yeah,
He's a
the only-
light boy.
The only
you
reason
know
he's
what I mean.
orange is that LEGO determined buyers don't like brown sets.
Yeah, because they look like poop. That's That's what kids think of.
I thought they looked like
They
Earth.
are kids are famously juvenile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's a
these
real
are being sold
defect
to
of
kids.
children.
Yeah. No.
Like,
what's their
what a
problem?
statement. Kids are famously juvenile. It's a real defect.
Yeah. As for my least favorite character, I think I'm gonna agree with the sentiment that the worst, as in head quotes, the worst characters are the ones that weren't properly developed. I'm gonna go with Mavra from Voyage of Fear. You know that Onumotoran.
But I don't
Yeah, he
know
didn't
about
get
that
a lot.
though. But
Yeah.
I think his presence in that book is awesome.
Yeah,
And,
he's
like
cool.
he's
Yeah,
really
but-
interesting.
But I felt they could have done more with him. He would. I felt he would really just an extra barrier on the to Ametrius journey, and then he disappeared. Then he showed up again in the powers that be, and like I don't know, he just felt kind of pointless to me. That's what, at
I
least
thought
that's
he
what I
was
think.
kind of
I
annoying.
don't know.
actually.
I don't
but
feel the same
it's-
because I think it told a good story, and I think that's what matters.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
he was a really random choice to be the guy who we see on the Red Star. Like, I get that, like, Greg never finished that story. Obviously, we have the Vision of Great Beings continuation, but, like, I would have picked, like, I don't know, Lee Khan or like someone we know.
No, but
Well, it seems like he
well.
wanted to include Lekon, but I think the reason he included Mavra in that cliffhanger at the very end of it is because Mavra was specifically, at the time on BSO1, his fate was specifically listed as unknown.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
fandom had
That's
just kind
exactly
of
it.
agreed we didn't know if he was alive or dead. And so I think
Yeah,
Greg
we
was doing
assumed
that
he
to
died,
be
but we didn't know for
ambiguous.
sure because we didn't see a corpse.
Yeah.
Whereas Lee Khan, we saw him die with our eyes.
So he-
in
yeah,
movie format,
exactly.
even.
So
Yeah.
he hadn't yet revealed what the Red Star was doing. So he was, I think with Mavra, he was teasing
Yeah.
the readers, but
Yeah,
he had not gotten to
if
it
he
yet.
chose Lee Khan, it would have told us for sure that people are coming back from the dead. But because he chose Mavra specifically, it's still there's still a mystery to that. You don't
Yeah.
know for sure what's actually going on the Red Star.
Mhm.
Okay,
And-
that
and-
makes sense.
As well, Lee Khan is kind of the obvious choice. It's the first person you expect to
Right.
see in the realm of the dead, whereas
Right.
this random Onumatoran is just in the corridor where you happen to be, you know?
Right.
that's
It's
why I
like
liked
Kopak
in-
and Bohatu are probably like, who are you?
Yeah, that
I
is what I
heard
liked
a
in.
story about you once around the campfire.
Right.
Yeah.
You look like
That is what I
Jola.
liked in Vision of the Great Beings. We don't actually see like an alive and well Lee Khan. Like by the time we get to him, he's not there anymore.
Mhm.
I thought
Yeah.
that
Yes,
was a
I
nice
Rest in
choice.
peace, my boy.
I remember that was something I was very insistent on with Gonal because I've been talking with him about continuations for a long time. I really wanted to like avoid a situation where it's just like, hooray, Lekon's back, no changes, right? It's like, no, I think that should really
You want to twist the knife.
yeah,
Zombie
twist the
Lekon.
knife.
Still
Really
consequence.
emphasize that this is not that there's consequences, that
Like,
death still matters, and that this is a dismal state of affairs that he's not happy about.
This is heck.
Mm-hmm.
no, that's why I know a lot of people. I've seen some people say that like they wish the Red Star survivors came back to live, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to do that because that's just so many
Oh, yeah.
deaths across the story that just get undone.
Yeah,
Like one or two.
I think it makes the deaths even stronger. Even those
Right.
death scenes.
Now
Yeah.
that said,
I agree. Storytelling wise, I agree. I think because I value in stories, I value the emotional impact of things above anything else. 'Cause to
Mhm.
me, that's like the point. You know, the point of art is to feel something.
Mhm.
And me personally, I like tragic stories because they kind of give me the strongest emotional response. You know,
right.
so I liked that. You know,
Yeah.
that was like, ooh, that's nice. That's satisfying for me.
Spoilers, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. The story's been out for a
Spoilers.
year.
Also, zombies. Bionicle zombies.
Yeah, it was a cool idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved the what's it? Descriptive language used for when they showed up for the first time. That was rad.
Yeah,
Like with the-
yeah, and you also
Meats
have
coming off and his
and you also have like the moral, like from Pet Cemetery, like it's generally better not to try to bring characters back to life because they come back wrong.
Mm-hmm.
One theory that I absolutely love, and I know it's been disproven. It's officially like Greg has debunked this theory, but it's the theory
this is just
that,
in your head.
no, it's a widespread theory. The theory that when Jala died during Mask of Life, he was briefly like dead for long enough to be revived on the Red Star.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
That there are therefore 2 Jalas running around at the moment.
Well, Jala
But
was
here's the
outside the
thing.
Matoran universe when he died,
Right.
Yeah,
so...
that.
I mean,
So it doesn't
he was
end up
on
working out, but it's a
Teeny
cool
Nui.
idea. Right, yeah.
Exactly.
You could
But
maybe
also-
make the argument.
But also there, I don't think with the way the Red Star works, I don't think they create a copy of the AI. I think they transfer the AI mind of the Matoran universe person.
Yeah,
But you could say that
it's
it's
like
a
a
good
body.
universe.
So
You could say
Takuta Nui
Takuta
creates a
simply
new Jala.
teleported him back. You could say that too.
Yeah, I think
Which,
this was a theory that was around
Right.
in the 2010s, like before all of these
yeah,
justifications
before we
had
really
come to
knew
light.
what was going
Yeah.
on.
Right.
But I just love that idea. That there's a second version of Jala just out there somewhere. Obviously not.
See,
Not
if
zombie
that was
hack.
the case, I would like to think of it as like an empty husk of Jala.
Right.
Maybe like a drone Jala,
Came
like
back wrong.
factory settings, Matoran universe.
Jala on factory
beginning.
settings.
Yeah,
Jailbroken Jala.
Pre-Velica Awakening,
It
you know?
would make for a good story, only if it's like an Elseworld non-canon story, because it's little morbid, too morbid.
Too dark.
it would be cool if Jaller had some PTSD from briefly seeing the Castora or something.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I feel like
I think-
his death and resurrection was largely, outside of a few scenes in 2006, largely kind of swept under the rug and not talked about because, the whole third act of Mask of Light is just on bath salts. It just goes nuts. And the rest of the story has always just kind of largely tried to ignore it, I think. Just be yeah, that happened. Here's an explanation. Let's move on. And but I think his death and resurrection could have really been used a lot more in a lot more in-depth way than it ended up being. I'm glad that we did get him reflecting on it in 2006, though. It was cool.
I think he should have stayed dead,
Oh yeah.
to be honest. I just think it would have been more...
That's
Yeah.
fighting
Like,
words.
We could
at least
Then we
the
wouldn't have Jala and
Nika.
I do like that they brought him... I do like what they did with him after he came back. But if I were in 2003 and I were writing that movie, I would just have him stay dead.
Boo.
Right.
Well,
you
kids
But of
movies,
course,
would
you
have prevented a good
Yeah,
thing
it's
from
a kids'
happening.
movie, so plenty
Yeah.
of people die in kids' movies, though.
Yeah, I mean, Makuta died 5 minutes later,
Right.
sort of. We assumed
Well, I know.
at the
Yeah, but
time.
he's a
Death.
bad man. He's a bad man with a deep voice.
Right. Exactly.
also, he gets
Jala's our
turned
friend.
into he gets arguably worse than death. He gets turned into the fusion and forced to be a part of the same body, then crushed by a door,
Then he becomes a gas.
and then I don't blame him for coming back. That was very vague.
Yeah, he
Would've
got
been a really
he got
ignominious
majorly
way.
inconvenienced, that's for sure.
It was all part of the plan.
Sure it was. Sure it
I like
was. That's a
that cope
cope.
he has.
Yeah, Pterodax is just out here coping.
It's a canonical cope. That's how I see
Yeah.
it.
Exactly. I do not believe
Pterodax
for a
is-
second that all of that stuff is planned.
That's what he says.
Right.
But I don't
On
think
the other
that's
side of the
that's
door, he
true.
just pulls out his journal, okay.
So
my
here's how I'm going to
brilliance.
spin this. If the other Makuta ask about it, here's how I'm going to justify it.
Sometimes the best way to win is by losing.
Is-
Pterodax, you got beat up. Just take the
Terry
L.
with his cognitive dissonance.
Right.
While we're on the subject of Takuta, his fusion with Takanova, I feel was also something that went unexplored. You fuse minds with the complete moral antithesis of yourself. And how does that not leave any consequences on how you see the world?
Because he forgore.
Yeah.
He forgore
Does
about
he
it.
actually
Well,
ever
that's-
reflect on this in the story? I can't remember. I don't think he
There's
does.
a Myth and Legacy story that talks about it, but nothing like canon, I don't think.
I think
Takanuva
Takanuva
does
briefly
kind of
says it
talk
in
about it.
2006.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
2006.
Well, Takanova, what about Pterodax?
No, he's coping. He's
good
just
too.
pretends it
Yeah.
didn't happen.
Yeah, he's got other things to worry about. He's got bigger issues.
For the benefit of the story and for the reveal in 2006 that he is still alive, or 2007 even, I don't think there's really an opportunity for him to reflect on it, because that would betray that he is in fact the Antidermis on Voya Nui, or he's the Maxilos robot. And then he just kind of disappears because it's necessary. Because otherwise we'd find out more of his grand plan before we're meant to have the reveal. So I think there's a
interesting
fair,
if you
fair
thought about
reason.
it afterwards, though.
I forgot when exactly we find out he comes back, because I know when Miss and Legacy's invasion, we have a big reveal.
We know for sure when Maxilos frees Matoro from the pit.
I think it was pretty heavily hinted at the end of 2006.
Yeah, it was.
With the Antidermis bat.
Actually, we now know exactly when it was when it happened. It was supposed to happen in Bionicle Legends number 7, Invasion.
Yeah.
And now that we have the introduction to that is the first canonical confirmation that yes, he lived and he's back.
Well, not in the text of that part that was released. It didn't explicitly say it. We're talking about when the story itself said, "Hey, this is Pterodax, this is Makuta."
Because Miss and Legacy did their version of Invasion, and that's so. I think canonically the Toanika found out, but we never see that.
Yeah, we know the Antidermis in 2006. There's scenes of it, thinking, but I'm not sure if I remember if we have the thoughts from it, like at the end of what is it, Inferno or whatever, if that's Makuta, but I know 100% it said it in 2007 in the comic, at least.
I think by the summer wave of 2007 they were pretty explicitly like, this is Makuta. 2007 they definitely said it for sure, like this is Makuta. Like they were so explicit with it, they had it in the comic, which as we know is the really abridged version of the story. Definitely.
I think we got a little sidetracked here. We had a question, what are our least favorite characters?
No.
Oh yeah.
I didn't ask
so long
that.
ago.
Ages.
Yeah, we're on a tangent from a tangent at this point.
That's okay. I need to fill 2 hours and we're not even an hour in.
Gathered Friends is 90% tangent. It's always been this way.
See how many tangents
in this case,
we
this
can
is
get
the
on
point, because we're not discussing any particular stories. We're just we really are shooting the shit,
Swear jar.
I will put a nickel in there. That's the least amount I could put. Literally, I live in Canada.
Now, swear jar funds go to keeping Wall of History online, so please.
Thank you. I'm so broke.
I'm not even sure if this one's going on the radio. That's the thing. But I'm not going to test that and make that difficult for the editors, so, Wow. Whoa. What happened there? I lost track of my brain. What is a particular moment from the story that really sticks with you in Bionicle?
Mine
a specific moment
is my favorite moment, or the one that sticks with me the most is at the end of I think it's Bionicle Legends 2 Dark Destiny, when the Toa and Aika arrive on Voya Nui. They just they're all kind of horrified by the fact that they've been turned into Toa.
Mm-hmm.
And they shoot their spirit stars up into the sky anyway. And then on the other end of the island, the Paraka see this, and it says that a chill runs up all their spines, but they would never say that to each other.
Yeah,
I really liked that.
They got the toxic masculinity.
Yeah, a little bit.
Only they went to therapy. They could have saved us so much trouble.
But no, Sparaya had to screw everything up.
A Sematoran, probably.
I'm sure. The Shadowed One has a licensed counselor.
Oh God, he would make them worse. Probably the moment in Bionicle that most affected me was well, it's kind of a basic answer, but I got the comic in 2008 with the Awakening of Matanui.
Oh my god, that's my exact answer.
Yeah, there you go. On Halloween 2008, I actually received it and I read it, and I got to the end and was just like just horrified in my little 11-year-old brain. I was like, whoa, this is wild. And then at the end, you got to the end and Makuta just won and took over. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, that to me is one of my favorite like creative decisions in Bionicle.
Exactly.
Having the villain win in their big master plan, and it like, it has lasting consequences in terms of like real time, real life time. Because it's like 2 years until it gets resolved.
And there's a whole serial about it. There's a whole serial and a fan-made companion to it.
Yeah, I loved that moment so much that I wrote a whole other serial about it.
Yeah, quick tangent about that. Like for me, like I read the books a lot. Like the Bionicle Chronicles were the first Bionicle books that I read. And
same.
But I kept up mainly through the comics because I got those for free, right? So I would get them in the mail and I would read them. And to me, it was kind of like an equivalent of if Bionicle was like a TV show, because there's that visual element, And it's just like each issue was like a new episode, sort of, So I'd like read it. And I would react to it as if I was watching like a TV show, And that one page where like the Matanui robots like rising from the sea.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What a page.
Because not only
What
is
a
it the
moment. Oh my God.
moment where we discover the Great Spirit, but it's also the moment where we find out, how it's meant to be Matanui, all of this. It's been turned on its head. It's not Matanui.
It's also a bunch of plot twists.
Yeah. It's a powerful moment.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that
amazing.
moment too. Specifically, the CGI animation, which I feel the impact is a lot greater. You like see the ravaged island completely break up. You see this giant robot come out of the sea, and then his eyes turn red, and the Ignika flies out. It's like, wow, holy crap.
Yeah, like for me, the comic was like the moment, like the first moment I experienced it, and then like around like the same day or like the same week they had the animation come out.
Yeah.
An underrated bit that I like that not many people talk about is that one little like narrated like audio thing that
Matanui rises.
The rising and the truth. Oh,
the rising.
That's nice. I will forgive him for mispronouncing Duma, like the name Duma. I will forgive it. It's that good.
Well, it should be Doom, but okay.
All right.
No,
it's just Duma.
If it's
Duma is the
Orc
pronunciation,
and it's Kanohi Road, why is it Duma? I mean,
just because the English language is 3 languages stacked on top of each other in a trench coat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's true.
So I apologize for anyone that I make feel old when I say what I'm about to say, but I was a child when the big reveal came out. I don't remember exactly how old I was, and I don't care to do the math, but it was single digits.
Oh,
yeah, sorry.
Well, so was I, but it was
that
the high
11,
single digits.
Yeah, well, let me do the math. I would have been 6. So
now I'm turning to dust.
Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all. So I kind of feel bad. I got a bit of the story spoiled because when I finally started to engage with the story, like when I looked up online, I don't like read the books or anything. I just like watched the videos on Lego.com. So I watched the Matanui saga, then the Rising, then all the commercials, and then the movies. So I experienced the story like backwards and missing like everything. Yeah. So I always felt a bit bad that I never got that reveal in real time, but like it's still very impactful. But because of that, what I will say, one of my favorite moments is in Journey's End, or maybe the Matanui saga, one of those, the scene where Makuta touches down on Barra Magna. And
you mean Journey's End, the book or the comic?
I think either one. I don't remember the comic that well, but I'm pretty sure it was just scenes from the book.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah,
but one has visuals and the other doesn't. So
okay, actually,
just asking,
no,
in case.
I think the basis of my enjoyment from the scene comes from those little stop motion animations they did for the stars. Obviously, in the book, it's much grander. But the scene where like Makuta touches down and a whole like swarm of Rakshi just emerges from the foot, and then Tahu and Takanuva come out, and it's just this really cool way because Bar Magna has been built up over the course of this year, and then we just see like these two worlds instantly collide on the battlefield, and I really like just the visual of chaos, almost like in it's kind of like in Infinity War when Thor comes down.
Yes.
Bring me
Like
Thanos!
Yes, exactly. Like that sort of thing where it's just Takanuva and Tahu meet Gresh, and it's they don't really know who they are at first.
But they know that they're good guys.
Really cool scene. They know that they figured that out eventually. They thought they were with Makuta at first. But just this really cool scene of just all the tension from Makuta's reign and from what Mononui's been doing on Bara Magna just finally coming to blows in this one just huge mess. And like I liked the art from the Momonui saga where we see like all the armies clashing while the two giants are battling in the sky.
New giants from
one always
Bionicle.
stuck with me.
Yeah.
That's good. There's a lot of great like moments, like visuals, like maybe not like literal visual, but like a visual in your head due to like prose or
that
whatever.
Big robot
There's a lot of
fight
great moments
really,
like that.
That big robot fight really should have been in a movie. Like imagine like Legend Reborn Part 3. Like
Oh yeah, we were robbed of that.
Yeah.
I remember Vahkiti was
money.
talking about that just the other day. Like he's wondering like what are some of the best like visual scenes from Myths and Legacy? Like, obviously not literally visual, but like the ones that create that in your head.
I think my favorite example of that is from Reign of Shadows: The Untold Stories, where it's like they exit, where Kopaka exits. He goes on like the ledge of the Great Spirit robot, and he sees all the Borok on the hull, and it's just like the big dang ocean, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love that
Cosmic.
moment. That was from that, right? Am I misremembering?
No,
Okay,
that's
yes.
Justice. I'm glad you liked that.
Yeah, that's in during our time reading the Myths and Legacy stories. I think that is like my favorite visual. Is just because A, it's a cool visual, and B, it just you feel despair. You know, it feels hopeless, and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like the angst. That's me. That's what I like. But that's why I love 2004, 2005, and 2006. Give me that.
Right.
Give me more of that.
Yeah.
But
I think
if I can,
my favorite
go for
moments. Yeah, I mean, I've got so many, like with the Ignition trilogy. I mean, we all kind of remember where we were when Matoro died, and you know the Great Spirit reveal, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was another great moment from when I was reading the comics. Like that was another moment I had. Actually, specifically the moment where Matanui dies briefly in the previous issue, like at the end, like the cliffhanger.
Right.
That moment was also like whoa.
I know. I remember.
I had to wait like 2 months to find out how that resolved.
Yeah. Logging onto the Bionicle wiki back in the day, finding Mata Nui was now deceased, and then a month later finding out Matoro is, that must be someone's just edited his page, right? Oh, there's a new comic. Oh no. Oh dear.
That's sad.
Oh dear. But yeah, for me, I don't know. The most impactful story moment was probably Island of Doom, which was the first chapter book that I got at the time, because I had to go out. I lived in the Netherlands at the time when the chapter books were coming out, and I couldn't get them then and there. I had to go on holiday or go to America or somewhere that was selling them. But the Island of Doom was the first one that I got the same year, like the same month that it came out. And this scene of despair of the Matoran being captured, the Baraka pretending to be Toa, and then the Toa Nuva being like having their grand return, only to be defeated really easily by these new Chiraka guys. That really stood with me. As probably one of the moments that really defined this new era of Bionicle, like
it's
the
definitely
Ignition
the moments
trilogy.
of all time.
Definitely one of the moments of all time. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always loved those books dedicated to building up a new setting, like the first book about Voya Nui, the first book about Mari Nui, Carda Nui, Barra Magna, like establishing the setting. And I think there's a similar moment in City of the Lost where we have Reza, the Onumatoran Hydrocka shepherd, who we're introduced to, given like a name for this character, and then he just dies. I'm like, oh, okay, it's that kind of story.
Gruesomely,
Okay,
if I
Rip
may
in
add.
peace.
okay, yeah, yeah, little things like that just give a little more despair. Like they get you invested in a character, and then you find out, oh, okay, that was why.
How sad. How tragic.
Yeah, I think for Myths and Legacy specifically, my favorite like story beat, my favorite visual, because I think there are so many visuals with Bionicle in general. I love, there's a scene in Mazeka where Mazeka is striding through the southern continent and he sees the great waterfall that is left behind by Boyanui. And it's just the massive, like continent-wide waterfall that stems from the sky down into this massive chasm that basically leads down to Karanui. But we never see that. We never see it described anywhere else. And just the way that that's described and the visual of that is just really beautiful to me.
There's a lot of great moments like that in Bionicle in general.
Yeah, it's so
I don't have
cinematic.
it in me. I don't have it in me to be a hater of things anymore. Not like that.
Same.
I just
Don't worry, I have plenty of it.
I have more energy to just like appreciate the beauty in things or the things that I like. If there's something that I don't really have much of an opinion on, I'm just like, I just don't talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
But, which sometimes I feel like maybe I come off as like toxically positive sometimes, but I do my best. It's not that, I'm just honest with how I feel about things, you know, or I try to be.
Definitely,
yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's just a lot of, and you just genuinely, there's nothing about Bionicle that I'm like, oh, I dislike this. I can't. You know,
it's more
you
fun
should've
just
done
to
it
like
this way.
things than to not.
You know,
Yeah. I think
You know,
going back to what we were discussing previously about why we're still writing these stories in 2024 is because it's so well done. It was so enduringly positive and it sticks with you because it's a real testament to the craft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a very special Lego theme. And I think that's a big reason why I think like G2 wasn't as popular is just because like for me at least the storyline was really like what kept me invested personally, and maybe a bunch of other people. Not everyone. There's a lot of people who just like the sets or like were very casually
it wasn't
into the
as
story.
deep as the original, as G1.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and I think what is impressive about G1, like me, like, you know, re-experiencing it as an adult is like, it treats the audience with intelligence, I feel, you know?
Definitely.
It doesn't feel like it's talking down to the audience, even though like the audience was technically kids. Like it doesn't feel like they're not like infantilizing them, you know?
Yeah,
It almost feels like it's written for teens almost, you know?
Yeah, I think that kind of was the plan. I think they specifically wanted to, like, even though it's a theme for like kids, for 6 to 8 year olds, they kind of targeted the story for 8 to 10 year olds, and that meant you had this trickle down of the older kids liking this cool Bionicle theme. And that
Yeah, I
feeds
think
back
Greg
to the
said
younger
that on
kids.
the episode of Gathered Friends he was on.
Yeah, I think it definitely probably comes from Greg actually, but yeah, it definitely has that feeling of being a more mature theme for its time and for other Lego lines of its era.
Yeah, the only other thing I can think of that I experienced from Lego that is kind of like similar is like maybe, I don't know, Exoforce.
Oh yeah, I remember liking Exoforce when I was like 8.
Yeah,
I was into
I
it.
feel because I read one of the Exoforce books. I don't know, something about it just like it treated the audience the same way Bionicle did, you know, with the same sort of like level of maturity. Maybe early Ninjago. I was only into like the first couple years of Ninjago. But around when Ninjago ended originally is when I started to get a bit older, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna move on to other things. I'm more interested in other things now, you know. But I never lost interest in Bionicle just because it's very like special to me, you know, and like is kind of the reason I'm a creative person. Period. You know.
Yeah.
all my creative passions have their root in my love of Bionicle as a child. So.
Definitely. I think a lot of people trace their creative origin to Bionicle specifically, especially in our community today. If we've endured this long, it's because we've really connected with the theme. And yeah, it just has such special staying power within our hearts.
Yeah, and I something I am grateful for is that, you know, a lot of the people who love Bionicle like we do, they've become adults who are like passionate about like writing or any sort of creative endeavor that they do, and like they're, you know, good at it. They've had years to like hone that skill, and it's like we kind of have like not necessarily like amateur, like experienced writers, at least, you know, in a sense, doing new stories about stuff they're passionate about. And to me, that with Myths and Legacies, that's what really helped to make it feel like authentic, like new Bionicle content to me. Because to me, that's what I like about this project, is that it feels like new content that we could have gotten from actual like official media, you know?
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I think we definitely strive to try and emulate that style. I think, well, especially LostHead has an amazing way of doing that, and of keeping the story alive in a way that is very similar to how Greg would have written. But yeah, there's so many professional writers now who, you know, they've returned to Bionicle, or they've come back, or they've always been with the theme, and they now have the skills to like make the story, create the game, or do the art, and to do all of the multimedia facets that made Bionicle back in the day.
Exactly.
But
to me, to me, basically, like Bionicle has come back in the way that I wanted. Because I mentioned before, I was more of a story guy than a set guy. The story is what I was passionate about, and like as a kid, I would choose the sets I would buy based on the story, like based on which characters I liked from the books, you know.
Yeah.
Rather than like, oh, that one looks cool, you know. But and because that sort of element has kind of been revived with Myths and Legacies for me in a way that's like satisfying and authentic to me, it's like, yeah, to me, this is like Bionicle is back in the way that I wanted it to be. You know, I don't need a G3 personally. You know, it's like I don't need new sets. I want more stories in that original world, and I'm getting them.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree there. Like, well, I was going to say, like, well, there's 3D printing parts available, but that's really bad timing with Shapeways. But like, you know, like you can buy the sets, you can read more stories. Like, it's not as available as Bionicle originally was, but the community is still like probably more active than it's been for a while.
Yeah, and plus with with like 3D printing technology being like pretty readily available in some way these days, right. You know, either through like some local service to like print the files for you. There's a bunch of people who like, you know, make models like based on stuff from the books or OCs or whatever, right? So it's like, so even then, in an unofficial way, in our own way, we can have new sets. We just make them ourselves, you know.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, you know, I don't need Lego to bring back Bionicle. Yeah. We're doing fine. You know?
Yeah. We got this.
I think it's really great how much the community's been able to do. Like we are very persistent, if nothing else.
The community is doing what I wanted Lego to do anyway, so it's all good with me. The only difference would be just like a legal stamp of approval at this point, I feel, you know, being like, hey, this is officially licensed by Lego, you know?
Right, and wouldn't that just bring like a whole can of worms with it?
Yeah, it's like, to me, the content is what I want the content to be anyway, from what I would have wanted from Lego. So to me, like, at this point, it's just like, I don't need Lego to have the official seal of approval.
We have
it's
Greg's approval.
Yeah.
So the fact that the fans
Greg is like us now. He's not an employee of Lego. So
the fact that the fans don't have the profit motive means that the fans can really focus on doing exactly what the fans want, which, you know, can be good and bad in various fandom situations. But,
you know,
for those of us who want like some fun canon compliant fix to expand the universe,
Super at the end of the day, the legal stamp of approval from Lego in terms of like what would be officially canon is kind of like, it's kind of arbitrary and doesn't
Yeah, it's
actually
totally
affect
artificial.
the story.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
like the story
Like-
doesn't need that to be the story.
Like I don't really need it to be canon. Like at this point, it's my head canon. Like
Yeah. To me,
Yeah.
what makes it canon to me, like what I want, a canon in quotation marks, in terms of what I want is the authenticity to the ideas that were planned by the actual people involved in it, like in the actual media, which we have with Myths and Legacy. And just having it be kind of like consistent in feel, you know, just like the style and quality. And we have that, so I'm like, you know, I feel like having it like officially licensed by Lego would be more of a semantics thing rather than having any like tangible difference, you know?
Mhm.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, canon it's an overrated concept.
Yeah,
I think.
canon ultimately is an arbitrary thing created by who owns an IP. Yeah.
As someone who reads
Precisely.
comics by DC, I agree with that statement that canon is overrated. If you read
Yeah.
It's really
DC
funny
comics,
that
you know
we're-
what I'm talking about.
It's really funny that
Wow.
we're talking about this because one of the events right before this one on the schedule is my hour-long video about the concept of canon and the Bionicle fandom's relationship to it. So
Mm.
if you're listening and you missed that, check it out on my YouTube channel.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
to be said about that. A lot to be said about
I
that.
hope I didn't didn't contradict what your thesis was. That would be awkward.
Or give spoilers.
I didn't really have. I mean, I sort of had a thesis, but it's you know up for interpretation.
As canon should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I definitely think there is a canon in the sense that like it's not canon that Tahu is silver.
Green.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess he kind of is, but never mind.
Lego
That's a
doesn't
bad
want you to
example.
know about Green Tahoe.
Yeah, it's not canon that Tahu is green, but like in
Wake
in
up.
that
You can't
sense,
take Green
it's
Tahoe
like
away from me.
Wake up, sheeple.
I
yeah,
know
like you
he's
can make
real.
your own. But like if someone says like, oh, if someone makes a green Tahu mock and is like, hey, this is a canon thing, and I'll be like, no, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't exist in terms of just like on its own, you know?
Sort
But,
of what is and isn't like generally taken and as accepted as the mythology.
Yeah, it's more like canon does exist in a literal sense. Like, you know, someone can be wrong about canon.
Mhm.
But it's like it doesn't, something being canon doesn't or not canon doesn't make it like not valuable.
Yeah,
you know?
it's not always a useful lens to look at things through. And I'm often turned off by when conversations get too in the reads of just like exactly what is or isn't canon. Or to be honest, that can be interesting, but then the assertion that you want to avoid is then assuming that only that which is canon should be valued.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And I think that's
yeah.
that way lies madness. That way lies utter madness.
Canon works best when it's a guiding force instead of a gate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that and also like it is like some things are like factually canon just because, but the canon itself is like an arbitrary concept, right?
Mhm.
But like
especially as you get into like the weird murky gaps and stuff that wasn't clarified or is up to interpretation, you know.
and
Who
there's
are
like,
any of us to say that our interpretation, if it's equally vague, is stronger than someone else's, you know?
No, for sure.
Yeah,
Like there are some things that are like we know are canon, but it's like that's what I mean by like, you know, someone can be wrong about canon, but like about things that are vague in the canon, it's like no one's more right than someone else, you know?
Yeah, my Nuri wears a cow, not a kamau.
Yeah.
This revisionism right here.
Sue me.
I will. But I don't
that
know
leads
how.
me into a question here. Has anyone ever written a story and gotten through into the writing or development process and then found out something that has derailed the whole story for canon? Has that happened to anyone as a writer here?
Yeah.
I've had it happen a
Probably
couple
more times than I
times,
can count.
but it's been for stories that haven't been published yet, so I can't really talk about them.
Oh, fair.
When I went on a previous episode for Gathered Friends with Call to Arms, I remember we had a scene where Ahali and Maku went to Tawahi Beach, And I didn't really realize beforehand that that's a very long journey to make. So I kind of edited that in my own personal version of the story. I don't know if that'll be updated, but that was one thing that didn't make it before it got published, but still, like, I was like, it's not like a huge thing, but it's like, oh, that's annoying. It's annoying to me personally. I don't know if it's annoying to anyone else.
Like a plausibility thing. It is something I thought about when I read the story, but I'm very open-minded, so I'm like, whatever. It doesn't ruin the story for me.
No, my own version, I just changed it so that they're at like the Great Barrier, like about to set sail. So it didn't take too much. It wasn't a huge deal, but there's definitely been a lot of stuff like that where I wouldn't say it's a limiting factor. Like, it's not like, oh, I want to do this cool thing, but canon is limiting me. Because if I want to do that, I'll just write something that's not canon. Yeah, I don't care. Mm-hmm. But it does help, like, enhance it sometimes. Or I'm like, okay, I have to play within these limits. Like,
I do think it's like, if people want to write like canon compliant stuff, I think that's extremely valid. It'd be weird of me to not say that because I'm part of Myths and Legacy. But it's like, as a fan, I typically enjoy more like canon compliant stories because I'm a fan of the world that was in actual Bionicle, like official Bionicle media. And what I'm personally interested in is more content like that, set in that world. Whereas, like, when something is like not canon compliant, it sort of like becomes its own sort of like spin-off world in a more literal sense. Yeah. And like, I don't think there's any problem with that. Like, there's value in that. People do what they want. It's just like, as an audience person myself, it's not exactly what I'm looking for myself to enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm glad people do make canon compliant stories because that's just what I want to read.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you want something that's like I've largely not engaged with fan fiction or such outside of this fandom, in part because it seems to be so much part of the parlance elsewhere that, like, you go to read a fanfic and you have to first understand like 7 things that they changed. It's just like, well, first of all, these are the Elden Ring demigods, but they're all working at a Starbucks or something and they're not related to each other or whatever. It's like, wait, okay, so you've changed like so many fundamental underlying things.
Why don't you make your
story
own
interesting? Right, like that might as well be your own thing at that point. So exactly. That's never really appealed to me. I like exploring a world, exploring a fictional world. Probably my answer to your question is probably, I don't want to go too into depth, but probably my biggest headache of creativity versus canon was the whole Element Lords debacle, which I won't really go into. But that was a frustrating situation to me because it's a murky area of canon in which, there are various interpretations and arguments to be had about it. But it seems pretty clear to me from that period of time, post Bionicle's End, that was like, these were some ideas that like Greg Farshty wanted to add to the canon, and didn't go about it necessarily in the most like strictly textbook, like a sensible manner. But at the end of so there's many arguments about that, sure. But at the end of the day, it's like, that's adding more stuff, more toys to the playbox, right? Like, I don't see, this is just my personal Bionicle politics opinion, but I don't see the need to like just entirely rule out new ideas just because, well, it doesn't align with a word or a phrase that was used here or there, right?
Yeah.
As long as it's in the spirit of the original story and adds to that creativity, which is something that I think the Element Lords absolutely do in Myths and Legacy, as you've seen. I promise I'm not just saying that because I like having more female characters on the scene, but it's definitely a part of the motivation there.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I've really liked a lot of what's been done with them in these fan stories.
Now the dynamic with the Greg comments over time with Bionicle has been a very interesting thing to watch unfold.
Yeah, that was. I was on the front lines for so much of it. Really interesting cultural shift of just like, that was the front lines of the canon wars.
I mean, so much of Myths and Legacy stories too is just based on something Greg said, and it was like, well, let's put that in an actual story, so it's not just, oh, Greg said that. But like, exactly. It's hard to say that I dislike that. It's just, it's created this very interesting situation where a large bulk of the canon was just in a Q&A session.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, right. It's bizarre.
Yeah, Like I think the Heart of Metro Nui story, which was one of my favorites on Myths and Legacy, was primarily just sparked because there was this one offhand thing in and I think it was one of the encyclopedias of, Takanuva once defended Metro Nui from Faustulus, and that wasn't like the main driving force of the story, but it was like, okay, we can cover that here.
And Kupik became the new chronicler.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Well, and that got revealed in one of the Legends books, I think.
It was in it was the one where Matoro died. I forgot what it was called. Was it Downfall?
Oh yeah, Downfall.
Yeah.
So like that had a moment we got to like Gonal got to like expand on that some more.
I have my perspective on the whole Greg like Q&A thing during the 2010s. Because I also remember people kind of becoming controversial, you know? For me, I was always happy with it because I was someone who was very passionate about like the world of like the fictional world of Bionicle, and at the time, no one had really done like a continuation or like additions to the story that were like satisfying to me. Or like was what I was looking for, because usually people would kind of like retcon some details about what Greg said that they didn't like or whatever, you know? Like, I don't know, Velika being a great being, I don't know, like various little things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's totally valid. They could do that, whatever. It's just not what I wanted to experience, like I've said. And to me, those Q&As, like, even though it wasn't ideal to get, like, new lore that way, to me, it was, like, the only way we could get new lore, like, official, like, canon lore, because he was still working for LEGO, and thus was, you know, the Bionicle story didn't exist anymore legally, but, like, he was the head of the story team, and he's still working for LEGO, and he's working as, like, an ambassador for LEGO. Therefore, it's coming from LEGO, you know? From someone who had the authority to do these things. So to me, it was like the only way we could get new lore in a canon way, you know? And I was just happy to get new lore, really.
Of course, the thing about that is that although, you know, we can say that he was vested with this authority, but I doubt there was anyone else at LEGO who really cared or was paying any remote amount of attention to that.
Oh, definitely. But he was.
Right, so. Exactly. So it's like he was in that position and he was given that stamp of approval just from being the person who's loudest.
And he cared enough to actually like engage with that.
But it's really interesting when you look at some of the reporting that I've seen done. Like I just saw an interview surface by Emily at Bionicle.gay. With a woman who worked on the original Bionicle.com and had some perspectives on like how all of the story was understood and put together. I think it can be really exciting and open-minded to broaden our horizons and recognize like the team of people that made Bionicle what it was. Not just Greg Farshian, not even just Christian Faber or Alastair Swinnerton or all of these other big names, but just like loads of people who didn't get their names put on anything. Can be really interesting to consider as well. That
could be interesting.
And so it kind of just like, you know, with the company not ceasing to put money and time into that, it eventually just, you know, dwindled down to just Greg being the one who was the last one left and willing to comment.
Doing anything about it.
But it's interesting to think about how, you know, it didn't have to happen that way. And in an alternate timeline, you can easily imagine a scenario in which maybe someone other than Greg could have wound up being the one with the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. So much of like what we understand as canon and enshrine as canon on BSO1 is really just Greg Farshti's interpretation of the canon in a lot of cases. And I think that we should consider that it's not even necessarily the only version of it that exists.
I don't disagree, but I see that as like a hypothetical and not what we have in reality, you know?
Yeah, I just like the idea of giving some more thought to, you know, the wide team of people over, you know, the decade of work that went into that.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, I was just more so referring to like just his time answering questions, and I was getting you
he didn't have to do that, and he's always been like kind of the number one fan. I think, of Bionicle. That he got involved with it because he saw it and thought it was so cool, right? That he made a comic. I think that that's really true to the spirit of a lot of our answers of like, how we got involved with Bionicle.
Yeah.
I think he's this creative writer who like really got his inspiration and imagination piqued or interested by the line like the rest of us. I think that's why he's often a really interesting guy to hear from.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah. That was my take on why I didn't mind the Q&As, because I was just grateful to have something. I was grateful to have something official from like someone who had the authority. He had the authority as long as until Lego explicitly said he didn't.
I was right there with you. I was on the front lines, just like lapping up everything I could. So
yeah. It's like, I want more info. I don't care what it is, as long as it's new.
Exactly.
I want new additions to things, because Bionicle is basically like dead in an official sense, right? So it's like, I just want something, man.
That was then when all the trouble happened, because I can remember in 2014, definitely, I was involved on BS01 and thought myself like an arbiter of what made sense to include on the wiki or not. So I was involved in all these arguments. But thankfully, that's a very, very much a past version of myself. I left that behind, and I'm happy to not be involved in that anymore. But yeah, it's wild. Just so many different eras of Bionicle and different eras of how we've interacted with canon. I hope we're not completely borrowing all of your notes, James, from your video, because I imagine this is discussed there too.
Yeah, I go into quite a bit of depth, but I think y'all had some unique perspectives, and
enough for
I'd
part
include
2.
as many.
And it's a supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
for
anyone
me,
else have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I got one. I wrote a story a few years ago. It was called The Way of the Lawless, and this was originally a story about Malum in his year in exile, and it was going to be the story of how he discovers the scroll and how he goes to Etero to warn Gresh about the coming of the scroll. That was the premise of the whole story. It was just going to be about him learning about Rockstuss, like from the perspective of the Wastelands and living with the Voroks. I was about 5 chapters into this story when I found an Ask Greg quote that said Malum had fought a Skrull in the arena and lost. And just like that, 5 chapters went up in smoke because you already knew about them, apparently. So I had to completely change the whole story. I had to start again. I had to reframe it as being over the course of a few months, not the first year. It could no longer be about him traveling north and encountering the Skrull in Roxas. And what it instead became was a story of him interacting with the Voroks and traveling east, I think I decided in the end. He's going to go a different direction, and he's going to discover the Wastelands, the Scarabax beetles, the Elemental Lord of Sand, and he's as well going to discover what happened to the oceans of Sferismac. So it actually ended up being a more rounded story that explores more of this space. So it actually had a positive outcome from being kind of thrown off the original plan. But it just kind of attests as well just to how extensively we keep records as a fandom. I don't think there's any other Lego fandom, any other theme that has catalogued and archived all of the canon material as extensively as the Bionicle fandom. And I will be really interested in years to come to see what happens with Ninjago or
Hero Factory.
Kid or Hero Factory, like how that material is archived. Because I think we're sitting on such a rich history of archive material. We have games, we have original files for games, we have interviews with the developers who made games, and the fact that we're able to retrieve this information to find out what Kanoki certain Matoran were meant to have, how their names were spelled. I don't see any other fandom really having that. So I think it's incredible that we have such a rich understanding of canon and such a vast archive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really impressive preservation work that is done.
I'm really happy it exists. I'm glad Wall of History exists because it's easier to get new people into it. because it's all like
Thank
nicely,
you.
neatly organized.
Definitely.
You know.
I try.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do wonderful work.
It's a very pretty website.
Yeah.
Ooh, I had a question to ask, but I forgot it, and that's an issue.
It's got a question. If you want,
I
want me to
remember you
ask a
saying
question.
something about like other writing projects outside of this
Yes.
fandom. Was that something you wanted to ask about?
What are things everyone does here besides Bionicle?
This is my life. What do you mean?
Well, I'm sorry to hear this.
Well, at my university, I'm working on a very interesting project to use evolutionary algorithms to simulate the evolution of thermostable proteins. So,
Hey yo, protein.
if
let's
anyone
go.
wants me to talk about biochemistry for an hour,
Ah,
Oh, yeah,
that's
is that
only
your
30
question
minutes
was-
I will
left.
Fields of study,
respectfully
or-
decline.
understandable.
I think there are a lot of Bionicle fans who have gone on into very technical fields like sciences, biochemistry,
Oh, that's real, yeah.
game development.
Lamau, not me.
Not
Yeah.
me too. I'm in,
Yeah.
I'm in the humanities.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you could argue with me. I'm in audio engineering, so it's like
That's
technically,
kind
that's
of
useful.
techy.
it's
You
like
would be
Practical.
you would be called
I'm
a
more on the
techie.
creative side of things.
Right.
In practical, the job title is misleading because it makes it sound like I'm building stuff. You know,
Mm,
no,
mhm.
I'm like recording and editing audio.
Right, of course, yeah.
But I do have
I'm
to
a-
have like a knowledge of like acoustics.
You're a poet,
Right.
not an engineer.
It depends. I have to have some knowledge of how like the physics of it works, like in the room, like acoustics in a room and stuff, to like set up microphones correctly. But like, so I
Okay.
guess I am a bit sciencey in that sense, but sciencey in the creative way, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds like a Bionicle fan, all right.
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah, I'm currently in geospatial analysis, which is pretty fun. You get to do a lot of creative like, coding and cartography with that.
good old rocks.
Well, more about geospatial as in like a lot of doing math with maps, like spatially distributed data. Although
Ah.
rocks were definitely a big part of my education. I spent a
Yes.
year being the custodian of a fossil and mineral museum for my alma mater. That was
Oh,
really,
that's
really
rad.
fun. Yeah, my office was this giant, like, like the room at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, with all the shelves and storing all the artifacts. That was my office for a while. There was a fossilized human skull in there. It was pretty fun.
Ooh, nice.
We had a good time.
Good old cadaver.
Yeah.
But
Were you asking about like other writing projects in addition to like fields of study?
anything you want to answer with, really.
Yeah, well, yeah. I have, to be honest, I have probably, my creative focus has probably, it's largely been off of Bionicle for the past couple of years. I did a lot of Bionicle writing back during 2020. I was actually working with Connell on the idea of a continuation for the Yesterday Quest and the Powers That Be for a while that predated Vision of the Great Beings, but that didn't end up, it didn't end up quite coming together because I just wasn't satisfied with how the stories were assembled. They weren't quite making sense to me, some of the ideas that we had. So Vision of the Great Beings filled that space. I still have ideas. Maybe I'll write them eventually. But I've written a few little things since then. I wrote like Power of the Great Beings, which you can find on my Archive of Our Own account. I'm quite fond of that one. And a few other snippets of things. I have some works in progress, even for Bionicle, that I want to get done at some point. I really hope to do that someday. But a lot of my energy has been going into, it's probably the case for a lot of Bionicle fans. I have this long-running Dungeons and Dragons campaign with some friends from all the way back to like grade school, actually, several of them. And I wound up, within the past few years, I started a habit of like writing these like in-character journal entries after sessions to try and get into the head of the character,
Okay.
really get a sense of that. And that spiraled out of control, as creative projects tend to do, and wound up being this whole elaborate long series of of writing project. So I have that. It's on a Substack, which is pretty fun. And it's been good to get me writing like every week. That's where a lot of my creative energy has gone lately, is into like D&D and other tabletop role-playing games, other indie games that I've been playing with a lot of friends. That is a really good outlet, I find, for a lot of creative storytelling. But yeah, it's probably part of the reason why I haven't written a lot of Bionicle stuff lately. So sorry for slacking off, everyone. But I'm enjoying myself, and the end goal would be to eventually write some stuff that's worthy of publication. And I have some ideas, so there's definitely momentum that's being kept up there.
Hell yeah, moments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Would anyone else like to share their other interests outside of Bionicle?
Sure.
I was going to say, sorry.
Oh, you go.
Okay. I was going to say, I really like that idea of like writing down stuff after a D&D campaign. That's something I've always wanted to try. I'm never actually going to play D&D, so
yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, well,
you got to get the right group for it.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get a game of Duronai Nui, the Bionicle D20 game. Started with my housemates, but I was just having this chat on the server the other day. Every time I try to learn more of the rules, I get more confused. So that's very slow going.
Right, exactly.
But I would like to get that going soon. But yeah, my main creative outlets, I'd say, are Bionicle. I have a lot of stories for both Myths and Legacy, and just like on my own time, just sort of works in progress right now that I would like to get put out at some point. But that's sort of where my main creative outlet goes. There is one, I had a really old book draft that I had. So I planned out like this whole 5-book saga in my head, and it was going to be really good. And I think I wrote about 100 pages, and I looked at it and I was like, this sucks. This is actually terrible.
I know that feeling.
No,
so
I'm sure it's not.
It's not going to come out till I'm happy with it, but I would, at some point, probably very far in the future, I would like to eventually try and revisit that and make something of that concept. But yeah, right now my life is mainly just writing Bionicle stories, and then I'm about to actually graduate with my bachelor's, and then I'm planning to head to med school once I get enough money saved up for that. I'd like to go into occupational therapy.
Nice.
Okay.
Congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping once I start that as a career, I'll have more time to explore other like creative venues. I've wanted to do like I have like a few screenplays actually not written down. They're written down in my head. But someday I'll get those down on paper. But my creative outlooks right now are a lot of someday I'll do this and someday I'll do that. So eventually I'd like to actually do something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same.
Relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many half-finished or barely started stories, like whips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not a writer if you don't have a drawer full of unfinished stories.
Yeah. It's not helped by the fact that I probably have unmedicated ADHD, but we're not.
Oh.
I can't really focus on that right now.
It's probably also an experience widely shared by a lot of Bionicle fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a wide range of story prompts and potential. As soon as you have one idea, you're like, oh, maybe I'll write something about Maranui or Voyanu in this other area of the story, you know?
Bionicle
one of the
fans are very
skills-
ambitious.
Yeah, it's really easy to start one. One of the skills that I have really learned to appreciate is in the brainstorming process of just like, oh, what if I want to do this story? What if I want to explore this theme? Is to like consolidate and simplify. I think that something I've seen again and again in the Bionicle fandom is that we are all really like ambitious creatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is always some incredibly ambitious project popping up.
Well, most of them don't get finished because...
And most of them don't get finished because they aim for the sun and then shoot themselves off into space and wind up with Voyager probes, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a
And
that's
I
a
think
great analogy.
Thank you. I think a really huge skill as a creative is like getting an understanding of your limits and what is like a doable task. What is something you can, okay, I have all these cool ideas. What is something that I can pare down and make into an accomplishable task out of this? That's why a lot of my Bionicle stories after Rostas have been short stories where I was like, in some cases, just a single scene where I was like, you know what? I think like a single scene will just get across what I was trying to explore.
Even I've been guilty
everything.
of that in my 16 years of being in the Bionicle fandom.
Mm-hmm.
What a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you see the original Rostas on my Archive of Our Own account, there was a note at the end saying like, stay tuned. I'll write like a continuation of the powers that be and the Yesterday quest. I've got ideas. Like, hopefully it doesn't take me another 2 years. And then I'm sitting here like 10 years later, like, oh no.
Yeah, I've been waiting. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I came close to doing it in 2020 and then I didn't end up taking the plunge. Nowadays, my thinking about that sort of thing is like, I don't want to write another Rostas because the conditions are just not right? Like, I'm not that idle. There's so much going on with the 9 to 5 and everything. But, but I can write, what matters to me as a creative is not actually so much what happens to Zarya and Kiara and Ord. I'm not really so bothered about that. But I'm more interested in writing stories about, like, what are some of the side characters that I'm interested in, rather than shouldering the weight of the main plot. I want to explore some side characters. So if you see more stuff from me, it's probably going to be stuff like that, stuff that focuses on, I have one in mind that would be about the relationship dynamic between Helrix and Tuyet over a series of interactions. I'm really excited about that. Yeah, because they serve as such interesting foils to each other. Another one with Lariska and Rudaka set during the Dark Time and the Dark Hunter and Brotherhood War. And another one that I'm interested in about the leader of the Sisters of the Skrull and her meeting with Anona and like some of their reflections on like Skrull history and what it means to be a Skrull and some of their reflections on that. And all three of those are ones that I'm really excited about writing, and I know that I can write. I know they're achievable. Those have been pared down after like loads and loads of other ideas that I eventually realized, these may or may not even be worthwhile for me. It's good to just be able to pare it down to like, what can I take on? What can I tackle at this present moment? Let's set a goal that is within reach and then work to do that. That I think I think that's a huge skill that a lot of us didn't have when we were like 12-year-olds, right? And so you saw so many Bionicle projects crash and burn because of that. But if you learn that skill, then I think you become a much more powerful creative as a result.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
That's very good.
There's something incredibly strong words there.
Keep your goals realistic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I can count on probably too many hands the amount of stories I've had where it's like, yeah, here's a quick one shot that's ballooned into like 12 chapters trilogy of like, okay, no, I can't do all that. So that's very good advice for just like paring it down, like making it manageable, because that also like imagine like working with side characters, like if you try to make like, oh, it's the continuation of Bionicle on your own, like that's like you're one person, there's gonna be a lot of
you'll
eyes
be
on
crushed.
that. Yeah.
That's why Visions has to be a huge project with a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
And it also, I think, certainly for a lone creator, something that can be really useful is understanding not even specifically the characters that you want to work with, but the underlying themes and ideas. And if you're capable of really getting down to the emotional core of it, of just like, well, what am I actually really interested in? Not even if the characters weren't even named, if they weren't even with these characters, what am I writing about? What topic am I interested in? And sometimes you find that theme crops up in a couple different characters, and maybe one theme that you thought you needed to like write a story about, Photok to tackle. It turns out you can actually get that. You can hit that same beat and that same topic by writing a story about a Topduk instead, something like that. Who knows, right? And you can condense that way too. Of like, if you're able to function at the level of like really getting down to like, what are the emotional ingredients that I'm trying to write about? That I've found can be really helpful of like understanding those themes at a base level, and then the characters as, you know, various reflections of and interpretations of those themes. That's I really like doing that character-based writing, really exploring, you know, who they are as people and how they interact with like this particular abstract question about the world. That's what I'd be doing with these girl-focused stories I have in mind, you know, Helrix and Tuyet, Lairska and Rudaka, and Anona and the Scrawl Leader, of just like, well, what are ways and what are there's some topics that both of these characters have in common, but they respond to them in different ways. What are some ways I can explore those topics through the interactions of these characters? I think that can be really fun.
Yeah. That's when you get into some real character-focused stuff as well. Like, why specifically these characters in a room? What's the benefit of that? What kind of conversations come of that? And how does that progress the story beats?
Definitely. Thank you
Definitely.
for the insight. Does anyone else have something to say about this?
Yeah. Anything. I mean, well, in terms of unfinished stories or in terms of me outside of Bionicle?
You know, anything you want to say.
Anything? Awesome.
Anything.
Well, yeah, outside of Bionicle, I mean, I work a 9 to 5 as well, so I do struggle to find the time to be creative. I find a lot of the time when I finish work and I start writing, it becomes very non-creative. My writing style does suffer from working. You know, you find like certain words or phrases you use day to day in work, like typing emails, like as per my last email. You find some of that does bleed through into your writing. And there's been a lot of times where I've looked back and I've just been so drained while I was writing that it just feels overwordy or non-creative, doesn't flow as right. So I think it's important to find that headspace and to be able to, you know, be creative and bring your best foot forward when you're writing, to do something that isn't the same mindless thing.
Too.
Right from the heart, exactly. Be original, be yourself.
Don't worry too much about, I gotta follow the rules of writing here. You know? Yeah. Otherwise, people will not like it. You know.
Yeah, exactly. But outside of Bionicle, I do a lot of stuff. So I do a lot of Lego specific content. So my main other interest is Hero Factory. I love Hero Factory. Almost as much as I love Bionicle, and I really want to write Hero Factory stories. I love it; it's great.
I enjoyed it when it was around. I think maybe because I just, you know, there was a void for me where Bionicle was, and it helped fill it. But I just haven't really thought about it much since it ended.
I think about it constantly.
There were a lot of interesting ideas that weren't actually explored in it. Right?
Breakout was pretty rad, though.
Yeah.
I loved Breakout.
I liked that one.
Breakout was peak Hero Factory.
Yeah,
And then
I really want to.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I really want to write a story.
Hero Factory past the first comic.
Wait, hold on, James. What are you saying?
Oh, I was just saying I didn't really pay attention to Hero Factory after the first comic, so I don't know too much about anything that happened in it.
The comics were like the first thing that got abandoned.
Yeah.
I forgot they did comics, actually.
Right? Exactly, because like the comics are like in a separate continuity as well.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was mainly the TV show that everyone connected with, and
that was like the main story.
Yeah, when I'm writing, those are the voices in my head that I hear. I hear the same voice actors speaking those lines. What does that sound like them? Yes, no. But yeah, I mean, there's other themes as well. I really want to start writing some Ninjago stuff because I think there's also appeal at that audience as well for the Ninjago fans. But the main thing I want to, my other outside interest is Power Miners. I really want to start writing some Power Miners content because we never got chapter books for that. And I feel like it's such an adjacent theme, so nostalgic as well for 2009. There's a lot of appeal.
Atlantis was also pretty rad. Give me that.
Atlantis too. I really want to write a story where the heroes from Hero Factory find themselves on a junk planet, and it's all about like recycling, and you know they get a new upgrade every wave. What happens to like the old robots? What happens to the scraps? All that stuff. I think that's a great theme.
Into the smelting pot.
Exactly. This like disposable world that they're in, where everything just gets melted down and reused or remade for the next
They
wave
better
and
recycle.
repackaged. You hope so.
I'll be mad at them if they don't.
There's
I'll send them
there's
an
a
angry
villain.
letter.
There could be a villain who is all about recycling because they have failed to recycle, and that's his whole shtick.
That'd be
But
rad.
I really want to do a power miners story where the power miners run. I think a lot of the sets had coffee cups and the illusion that they're always drinking coffee. What if the power miners didn't have coffee? The rock
They would
monsters
get
out of
took away
rates, I would
their coffee.
imagine.
Exactly. So yeah, those
Dark
are like some of
ending.
precisely. Those are some of the stories I want to write outside of Bionicle. But I've got interest in D&D as well. I think a lot of people who have interest in Bionicle, they have this shared love for D&D, these roleplay games. But yeah, I think what Nicrophora is saying as well about finding something that's achievable. So often I get back from work and I'm not feeling creative and I struggle to put the idea on paper. But you really have to find the themes and you have to find the original reason why you wanted to write the story, and you kind of have to bottle it then and there, because leave it a week and you'll have forgotten, and you won't have the same drive to write this thing that you did on the day. So I am constantly writing notes, and I've got so many notebooks for paper, like scraps of ideas that I had to come back to later, or just because I know I will forget them, to save me from just losing that spark.
Well, thank you for sharing, friend.
No worries.
Yeah,
All right, so... go ahead.
That just leaves me to answer the question. Now, like I said, I went into the humanities, not the STEM fields. I'm currently in the doing a victory lap in regards to my master thesis in library science.
Oh, hell yeah, library sciences, boy.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so I'm trying to finish that so I can have the proper education to get a decent paying job somewhere in some literary field, either in a library or somewhere else. As for my writing, I've had ideas for novels, for long form stories, but every time I think about it, it's like what Nicrophora said, like, I'm really not cut out for this. I really don't have the discipline or the time for this. So I mostly stick to poems and short stories, which I feel I find more relaxing, honestly.
I like the brevity of
exactly.
your content. It's very refreshing, because I'm someone who's like, long stuff is good, but I don't think something is automatically better if it's like longer.
Yes, of course.
Sometimes some concepts are more effective when they're short.
Sometimes things that are longer are worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just read the Wheel of Time.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, as for my future projects, as far as my regular writing is concerned, I don't really have any crazy ideas that I can share. As for Bionicle, I have plenty. There are stories I want to do about the Great Disruption, the Matoran Civil War. That's like something I'm interested in. Maybe something about Bara Magna, although maybe something about that. Zakas is like very interesting, like its own hellish warlike microcosmos.
I would like to see someone expand on Zakas. Have like some stories, like maybe with like the expand on the culture there.
Yeah, I've been reading way too much about the Yugoslav wars recently, and like I think there's some potential to like try to explore the relations between the tribes on Zakas and how they get along, or rather how they don't get along. That could be really interesting, like its own mini series that's kind of compliant, but it's not like super connected to the main story. That's something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, more stories about Matoran. Because I found
Matoran.
that
They're the regular people.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah.
All right, we have 5 minutes left. Is there anything anyone wants to discuss for these last few minutes, or like any final words you guys have for it?
Carpe diem.
Seize the day.
Right, yeah. Consolidate your ideas down to manageable, achievable projects. That's really the tilt of my creative lessons that I've learned over the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Very good advice to have. A lot of advice a lot of Bionicle fans need to take to heart.
It's we somehow we're a fandom of some very similar minds. I think advice that works for one of us tends to go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like, I guess there's no shame in not finishing a story. I mean, part of the journey is just engaging with it and writing what you can.
Practice.
But always do what you can. Finish the story. Do whatever is possible. But there's no shame as well in a project fizzling out. Just as long as you gain the experience, you have the fun, and you put pen to paper and just enjoy what comes out.
Yeah, exactly. And do it if you care about it.
Also do it in a way that it's good, that the end product is at least decent.
But that's very subjective.
Yeah,
all you can control is.
I mean it in the sense that it's
doing something that you're satisfied with.
I meant it in the sense that it's coherent, that it's readable.
Right.
I
think ultimately every creative should be creating for themselves, right?
Yeah.
There's often this temptation to like create something that the largest audience will approve or something, but I think that in doing that, you can often lose a lot of what makes it special and really come alive. A lot of the best creative works that I've ever encountered are like, strange indie games on like itch.io, that sort of thing. Stuff where it was clearly like one person made this for themselves, and because of that, they showed so much love for it that it just really comes through,
Yeah.
I really like a good creative work like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if you build it, they will come. If you create something for yourself and you really like
something
it,
you're
then
satisfied with.
Yeah, the people who are, maybe most people will look past that, but the people who are like you, who similarly like the same things, they're going to see that and they're going to go absolutely nuts about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's been a lot of the greatest creative works that I've engaged with in the past few years. That's why I tend to mostly engage with like smaller indie stuff off the beaten path.
Yes, I'm gonna have to cut you off there, just in case anyone else has thoughts. We got less than 2 minutes before we have to hard end the recording.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have something quick to say?
There's no need to write with the door closed.
Yes, you're right.
If I leave the door
James,
open,
do you have something to say? Any last words?
Then maybe close the door.
James, do you have any last words?
Check out
less than a minute.
My new Wall of History update that's hopefully launched by the time this releases. If not, I'm probably just going to go live in a cave for the rest of my life.
Thank you. Thank you for telling us this.
Inspiring words.
All right. Well, that's the end of the Writer's Room special. Now, the audience will be presented by the first 15 minutes of a reading of an upcoming Myths and Legacy story. It shall be read by Lahari. Please enjoy. Goodbye.
See ya.
Goodbye,
Happy Bionicle
everybody.
Day.
Happy Bionicle
Happy
Day.
Bionicle Day.
Happy Bionicle
Happy
Day.
Bionicle Day.
Bionicle Legacies. Legacy Weapons. Story by Bob the Doctor 27. Published by Myths and Legacy. Chapter 1. Pokes, Toahaga of Stone, concentrated to call upon his elemental powers to raise the great megalith of rock before him. With a mighty heave, the stone slab shifted, allowing the proto-cairn trapped beneath it to wriggle its way free. Vocalizing a weak screech, the Rahi charged past the Toa, its tail slamming into its waist and knocking him aside.
No need to thank me.
Wheezed the Toa, watching as the creature headed south, following the scent of the Rahi that had been liberated before it. It had been a lengthy endeavor to work his way this far into the ruins of the Matoran universe with his teammates, freeing the remaining survivors trapped by the collapse of the Great Spirit robot. Together, rescue teams were cooperating to recover stranded settlements of Matoran and Rahi, many of whom were pinned beneath debris like the proto-cairn, or huddling around the dying heat sources while the world crumbled around them. Umonga, along with many of his surviving Toa of Earth, had remained behind on the southern continent, where they were working tirelessly to dig out the Matoran who had taken shelter in the Nui caves. Similarly, Gaki joined her Toa water sisters to transport the universe's aquatic Rahi to the oceans of Spherus Magna. Chuckling at his own fortune, Oak straightened his back and gazed out triumphantly at the valley around him. A proud city belonging to the followers of the Baraki Pridek had once stood here, now dilapidated and overgrown with vegetation in his absence. Many exotic breeds of Rahi had settled here, along with the thriving village of Famatoran in the east. While Aruni and Kulos had spent their morning occupied with the island's Manturi population, Pokes and Norik had concerned themselves with the villagers. Now, all four Toahaga had reconvened for one final sweep of the island before moving on to the northern isles. "I'm surprised the Toamari haven't pitched in," mused Iruni, using a Ratuka spinner to heal a Husi that was hobbling on a wounded leg. "Could have used Kongu's help hurting those fader bulls." Pokes exchanged an uncertain glance with Kulas, whose torn features showed up even on his own mask of Rahi control. "I'm sure they have a good reason for their absence," suggested the Toa of Ice, turning to face the horizon, which seemed locked in a perpetual state of sunrise. Pokes snorted.
Or a bad one.
In a place far removed from the grasslands of the Matoran universe, Jala, leader of the Toamari, watched the rising pillars of stone and earth slowly grew out of the seabed. He gazed impassively as they nodded together, rising up through the ocean's depths to meet the surface an inch at a time. The fortress that the pillars now surrounded was ornate and beautiful, and the gold-skinned being had seen fit to assign the Toa the responsibility of reinforcing the foundations. Itching at the back of his mind, the Toa of Fire could sense the influence of another presiding over his thoughts, as though a vicious cloud were numbing his mind and pushing him out. It was a sensation that he had felt before while under the hypnotic influence of the Baraki Takadox, though the force that commanded his limbs now left him wholeheartedly committed to the cause of his new master. There was no inkling of resistance now, just the dignity of humble servitude to the first true leader he had ever known. Under his command, the Toamari gave their elemental energies gladly in a watery expanse where no other Toa dared journey, and carved a place for the Skakti to finally reside on this strange new world. They had worked tirelessly, their labors consumed entirely by the construction of this underwater platform, manipulating the untouched depths of Aqua Magna to extend the foundations of a fortress. Beside him, Iparu and Huki were hard at work channeling their respective elemental powers of earth and stone. Ahali summoned water currents carrying sediment. Jala supposed it was only fitting that the Toa should work so vigorously to develop the foundations of such a structure. After all, the last time they had united their powers, they had brought down the Cord, destroying the lost city whose name they honored, Mari Nui. Of course, back then, they had counted an extra Toa amongst their number, a loss Jala doubted his team would ever truly heal from. Perhaps this was penance for their failure, an opportunity to right the destruction that they had wrought, a way to recognize their fallen comrade. With the sixth Toa among them, they might have honored their new leader with a tower of glistening ice upon which to build his kingdom. Spurred on by the tremendous guilt in his chest, Toa of Fire nodded to Kongu, who wordlessly swung his arms around and opened another air corridor between his teammates and the newly formed patch of rock. Launching a burst of fire through the oxygen-rich tunnel from the tip of his power blade, Jaller welded shut a fissure of stonework, a growing fault revealed to him by his Kanoe Arthron. There could be no imperfections. Observing from the shoreline of Aqua Magna, the gold-skinned being to whom the Toa Mari owed their allegiance smiled warmly. Flanked by legions of his followers, he remarked how vastly his numbers had grown. For some time, he had come to contemplate the nature of his genesis. Born of the fused psyches of Vortix, Steltion, the Ziglac, and the six renegade Paraka, he had emerged from the annals of ancient myth as the salvation of the Skakti species, the conquering titan capable of withstanding the fearsome Makuta, even taking the likeness of their most barbaric champion, Irnak. Finding a universe in turbulent disarray, he had united the remaining tribes of Zakaz under his banner, and now, with the downfall of Nektan, his army had grown tenfold. With Matanui once more absent from this fledgling world, and with a team of Toa under his command, he was uniquely positioned to conquer. He cast a cursory glance over the droves of warriors assembled at his side. Within their chests, he sensed a desire for vengeance and mobility. They were bruisers and laborers, hardened by centuries of infighting and civil war, all too often dismissed for their more violent tendencies. Their passions ran deep, and yet they had proven to be blunt and predictable, like most Skakti he had known over the course of his 9 lives. Puffing his armored chest out and stepping forward, one of the Skakti generals moved to address him. "My liege, these Toa Mari," he began cautiously. "They are not to be underestimated. My clan has heard tales of their exploits on Voya Nui. They may champion the will of Mata Nui, but they are unlike any before them. We must tread lightly where they are concerned." "I consider it a wise policy never to underestimate Toa," agreed the gold-skinned being, his voice conveying a wisdom as old and inflexible as the aeons. Hardened by the war on Zakaz, his tribesmen bristled with anticipation, with the only prospect of his leadership keeping them from unleashing their fury on one another. He had seen their deepest desires, even given form to a number of their more diverse cravings, and still he remained unfulfilled by the terseness of the Skakti imagination. Ambition was certainly a sentiment felt by the component species in his genetic makeup, yet such appetites were not his own to yearn for. Skakti had venerated him as a veritable messiah, a conquering titan capable of withstanding the fearsome Makuta. In truth, he had no such aspirations. The golden colossus could already feel his interests in their cause waning. For now, the Toa add credibility to our endeavor, he announced to the warlord who had approached him. But I take your counsel under advisement. Once their usefulness has expired, so too shall they. A satisfied murmur resounded amongst the assembled Skakti. Already the blind concurrence of his followers was growing tiresome. The gold-skinned being continued to gaze out with interest at the Toa Mari riding the waves, constructing a plateau upon which he would build his fortress. The Toa had been given limited instructions, and yet they had already completed their task as eagerly as a Pokawi flocking to shore. Unlike the bland Skakti barbarians, he could taste the delicious remorse emanating from the Toa. He found himself wondering what manner of cravings Matanui's chosen guardians indulged in when tested as they had been. Deep within his amalgamated psyche, a Khan smiled a toothy grin at the notion.